My name is Tony, and at 67 years old, I never thought my only daughter would throw coffee in my face and call me disgusting. Amanda used to be my pride and joy. When she returned home after her marriage fell apart, I welcomed her with open arms. I had no idea she was plotting to take everything I owned. The moment that lukewarm coffee hit my face was when I finally saw the truth. If you want to hear how I stood my ground and what happened afterward, tell me where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss another life lesson from someone who learned it the hard way. Looking back now, I suppose I should have seen the signs. But when you love someone, especially your child, you tend to wear rose-colored glasses. Before all this happened, my life was simple but satisfying. I had worked as a mechanical engineer for 42 years before retiring at 65. My wife, Sarah, passed away from breast cancer 15 years ago, leaving me to raise Amanda, who was 15 at the time, all by myself. Those years as a single father were challenging but rewarding. Amanda was a bright, cheerful teenager despite losing her mother at such a critical age. I did everything I could to fill both roles, though I knew I could never replace Sarah. I attended every school play, helped with homework, and even learned to style her hair for prom, though that attempt made us both laugh until our sides hurt. The bathroom looked like a hurricane had hit a hair salon, but Amanda hugged me and said it was perfect anyway. When Sarah died, I made a conscious decision to put Amanda first. I declined promotions that would have required more travel and turned down social invitations to ensure I was home for dinner every night. My colleagues thought I was crazy to pass up the chief engineer position, but watching Amanda graduate high school with honors made it all worthwhile. Teaching Amanda to drive was one of my favorite memories. We spent hours in empty parking lots, with her grinding the gears of my old Ford and me trying not to visibly wince at each jerky stop. But she learned quickly, just like she did with everything. The day she got her license, she insisted on driving us to get ice cream, beaming with pride the entire time. College was another milestone. I had saved every penny I could, working overtime and weekends to ensure she could attend the university of her choice without crushing debt. When she got accepted to Northwestern with a partial scholarship, I thought my heart would burst with pride. Moving her into her dorm was bittersweet. The house felt empty without her, but knowing she was pursuing her dreams made the silence bearable. After college, Amanda landed a job at a marketing firm in Chicago. She would call every Sunday like clockwork, telling me about her week, her friends, and eventually, about Greg. He was a successful corporate attorney she met at a charity event. When they started dating seriously, she brought him home to meet me. Greg seemed like a good man, ambitious and intelligent, though perhaps a bit too focused on status and appearances. But he made Amanda happy, and that was all that mattered to me. Their wedding 5 years ago was beautiful. Walking Amanda down the aisle, I felt like I had successfully completed my most important job as a father. Seeing her so radiant, starting this new chapter with a man who could provide for her and love her, I thought I could finally relax. Sarah would have been so proud of our daughter and of us for navigating life without her. After the wedding, I settled into retirement in my modest 3-bedroom house in suburban Michigan. The home where Amanda grew up held countless memories. I kept myself busy with my garden, growing vegetables that I often shared with neighbors, and attending my Veterans Club meetings twice a month. I had served 4 years in the Army right out of high school. Nothing dramatic, mostly stateside engineering work, but the camaraderie of other vets was comforting. Life was quiet but good. I had a small circle of friends, mostly other retirees from the factory, and we would get together for fishing trips or to watch football games. I started volunteering at the local community center, teaching basic computer skills to seniors even older than myself. It gave me purpose and connection. Every night before bed, I would look at the family photos on my nightstand. Sarah smiling on our honeymoon, Amanda at her graduation, and her wedding day with Greg. I would go to sleep content, believing I had done right by my family. I had raised a successful, independent daughter who was happily married and building her own life. I was proud of her and proud of myself. Little did I know how quickly all of that would change. The first sign that something was shifting came about 2 years after Amanda and Greg got married. Her weekly Sunday calls became less consistent. At first, she had reasonable excuses. They were both busy with work, traveling for business, or attending social events with clients. I understood that newlywed life and building careers took priority. I never wanted to be the clingy father who made his daughter feel guilty for living her own life. When we did speak, our conversations grew shorter. Amanda seemed distracted, often multitasking while on the phone with me. I could hear her typing or walking around, her attention clearly divided. The detailed updates about her life dwindled to brief, general statements. Fine, busy, work is good, nothing new. Gone were the enthusiastic stories and hearty laughs we used to share. By the third year of her marriage, calls had reduced to once a month, sometimes less. I started being the one to initiate contact more often than not. When my birthday came around that year, her call was 3 days late, and she spoke for barely 5 minutes. I told myself this was normal. Adult children have their own lives. My friends at the Veterans Club shared similar experiences with their kids. We joked about being old news once the children established themselves, though the laughter often didn't quite reach our eyes. What I found most curious was how Amanda gradually stopped mentioning Greg in our conversations. In the beginning, it was always Amanda and Greg did this, or Greg and I are planning that. Then it became Amanda did this, her office accomplished that. Greg became a ghost in her narratives. When I would ask specifically about him, her answers turned vague and short. He is fine. Work keeps him busy. The usual. I considered reaching out to Greg directly but hesitated. I didn't want to overstep or create tension in their marriage. Perhaps they were going through a rough patch, and Amanda wasn't ready to discuss it. Marriage has its ups and downs, as Sarah and I had experienced. I decided to give them space to work through whatever was happening. Then came a 3-month stretch of complete silence. My calls went to voicemail. My text messages received brief, non-committal responses. Sometimes days later, I left cheerful updates about my garden, the neighborhood, and old friends, trying to maintain our connection without pressure. Inside, worry gnawed at me, but I reminded myself that Amanda was 30 years old, not a child. It was a Wednesday evening in April when my phone rang unexpectedly. I was just finishing dinner, a simple baked chicken with vegetables from my garden. Seeing Amanda's name on the caller ID sent a surge of relief through me. When I answered, however, her voice sounded different, strained, slightly trembling. "Dad, I need to ask a favor," she said without preamble. "Is it okay if I stay with you for a while? Greg and I just need some space to figure things out." My heart sank at the confirmation of trouble in her marriage, but it also swelled with the opportunity to be there for my daughter. "Of course, sweetheart," I replied immediately. "Your room is always here for you. When will you arrive?" There was a pause, then a sigh that sounded almost like relief. "Maybe this weekend? I need to arrange some things first." "Take your time," I assured her. "Just let me know when you are heading out, and I will have everything ready." After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen, emotions swirling. Concern for whatever Amanda was going through competed with a secret, shameful happiness at the prospect of having her home again. I pushed away the guilt, focusing instead on practical matters. I would clean her old room thoroughly, wash the linens, and stock the refrigerator with her favorite foods. That night, I lay awake longer than usual, staring at the ceiling. Whatever was happening in Amanda's life, I was determined to be the supportive father she needed. Perhaps this time together would restore the closeness we had gradually lost. I pictured us talking over coffee in the mornings, maybe working in the garden together, or watching old movies like we used to when she was younger. This unexpected turn might be an opportunity to rebuild our bond. I spent the next few days preparing the house, cleaning with an energy I hadn't felt in years. I even drove to the specialty grocery store 30 miles away to get the artisanal bread and fancy coffee Amanda had developed a taste for in college. I wanted everything to be perfect, to make her feel welcomed and loved. I was ready to listen without judgment, to offer advice only if asked, and to be the steady presence I thought she needed. By Sunday, her old room was immaculate, with fresh flowers on the dresser and new towels in the adjoining bathroom. I even replaced the ancient twin bed with a comfortable queen size, hoping to make her stay as pleasant as possible. As I stood in the doorway, surveying my work, I felt a sense of anticipation and hope. Maybe this difficult time in her life would ultimately lead to something positive for our relationship. I had no idea then how wrong I was. When Amanda finally arrived on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, I barely recognized the woman standing on my doorstep. Her previously natural brown hair was now platinum blonde, cut in an angular style that framed her face sharply. She wore designer sunglasses despite the overcast day, and her clothes looked expensive in a way that seemed out of place for someone supposedly in the midst of marital troubles. Most striking was her expression when she removed those sunglasses, a strange mixture of detachment and calculation that momentarily froze me before I stepped forward to embrace her. "Welcome home, sweetie," I said, reaching for her suitcase. Her posture stiffened slightly at the contact, but she allowed a brief, perfunctory hug before moving past me into the house. "It looks exactly the same," she remarked, her tone making it unclear whether this was an observation or a criticism. Her gaze swept over the living room, lingering on the worn but comfortable furniture that had served me well for decades. I tried to bridge the awkwardness with enthusiasm. "I made up your room with a new bed, and there is fresh coffee in the kitchen. Are you hungry after your drive? I could make you something." Amanda shook her head, already scrolling through her phone. "I ate on the way. I think I will just take my bags up and rest for a bit." The drive was exhausting. I watched her ascend the stairs, wondering why this reunion felt so different from what I had imagined. Gone was the vulnerable daughter, seeking comfort. In her place was a poised, distant woman who seemed almost annoyed to be here. I reminded myself that people in emotional turmoil often put up walls. She would open up when she was ready. That evening, I prepared her favorite meal from childhood, lasagna with garlic bread and a fresh salad. When Amanda finally emerged from her room, she glanced at the table with a frown. "You know I do not eat carbs anymore, right?" she said, picking at the salad but ignoring the main dish I had spent 2 hours preparing. "And this dressing must have a ton of sugar in it." "I am sorry. I did not know your diet had changed," I apologized. "We can go grocery shopping tomorrow and get whatever you prefer." She shrugged, taking a small portion of salad to her plate. "So," she said after a moment of uncomfortable silence, "how long has it been since you updated anything in this house? The decor is very 90s. I looked around at the home I had maintained carefully but had indeed not significantly changed in years. I guess I never saw a reason to change things just for the sake of change. "It is comfortable for me. That is the problem, Dad," she said with sudden sharpness. "You get comfortable and then just stop trying. You could make this place so much nicer with a little effort." The criticism stung more than it should have, but I changed the subject, asking instead about what had happened with Greg. Amanda immediately closed off, her expression hardening. "I do not want to talk about that," she said firmly. "I just need some time to figure things out." End of discussion. Over the next few days, a pattern emerged. Amanda spent most of her time in her room on her phone or laptop. When she did emerge, it was often to make subtle and sometimes not so subtle criticisms about the house, my habits, or my appearance. She rearranged the kitchen cabinets without asking, complained about the water pressure in the shower, and suggested my wardrobe needed a complete overhaul. A week into her stay, I returned from the grocery store to find several of my living room furnishings moved to the garage, including the recliner where I read every evening. "That chair was destroying the flow of the room," Amanda explained when I questioned her. "And honestly, Dad, it smelled like old man. I ordered something more modern that will be delivered tomorrow." "But I did not agree to buy new furniture," I protested, trying to keep frustration from my voice. She waved dismissively. "Consider it a gift. This place desperately needs updating if you ever want to sell it." "I am not planning to sell my home," I said, increasingly confused by her behavior. "Well, you should consider it. This neighborhood has appreciated a lot. You could downsize to something more appropriate for a single person your age." The conversation left me uneasy, but I tried to rationalize her behavior as displacement of whatever emotional turmoil she was experiencing with Greg. Speaking of whom, I still had no clear understanding of what had happened in their marriage. Any attempt to broach the subject was immediately shut down. The situation escalated when Amanda began inviting friends over without warning. These were not people I knew, mostly women her age who arrived in expensive cars and filled my peaceful home with loud laughter and gossip. They would take over the living room and kitchen, leaving messes for me to clean up after they left. The first time it happened, I was too shocked to say anything. By the third impromptu gathering, I gently suggested she give me some notice before having guests. "Do not be such a buzzkill, Dad," she replied with an eye roll. "It is not like you have anything else going on." One evening, I overheard Amanda on the phone in the backyard, thinking she was alone. I did not mean to eavesdrop, but her voice carried through the open kitchen window as I washed dishes. "No, he has no idea," she was saying to someone, her voice low but clear. "Greg thinks the separation is temporary, but I am done. Once the divorce is final and I get my settlement, I will have options. Dad's place is just a stopping point." My hands stilled in the soapy water as the truth dawned. Amanda had not been honest about her situation. This wasn't about needing space or working things out with Greg. From what I could gather, she had chosen to leave her marriage, possibly for another relationship, and was simply using my home as convenient accommodations while she sorted out her finances. The next revelation came when I found a credit card statement in the mail, showing several $1,000s in new charges at high-end boutiques and restaurants, all made since Amanda had arrived. It was my credit card, which I had given her years ago as an emergency backup and had forgotten she still had. When I carefully brought it up over breakfast, her response was shocking. "Oh, please," she said, barely looking up from her phone. "It is not like you are using that money for anything important. Consider it payback for all the free babysitting Mom did while I was growing up." I was speechless, both at the entitlement and the casual cruelty of invoking Sarah that way. That was when I first began to wonder who this person living in my house really was, and what had happened to the daughter I thought I knew. The transformation in my daughter became more pronounced as days turned into weeks. What began as subtle criticisms evolved into outright disrespect. One morning, when I asked if she had plans to look for work locally while she was staying with me, Amanda let out a derisive laugh. "Work in this backwater town," she scoffed. "What exactly would I do here, Dad? Bag groceries? File papers at your friend's insurance office? I have an MBA from Northwestern." I tried to keep my voice gentle. "I understand your qualifications, Amanda. I just thought having something to focus on might help while you sort things out. And your savings must be getting low if you are using my credit card." Her eyes narrowed. "Wow. So generous of you to let me stay here, then criticize how I spend my time. I am going through a major life transition. In case you forgot, I know, and I am trying to help. That is why I am here." She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "If you want to help, you can stay out of my business. You have no idea what my life is like now. Everything is different from your day, old man." The term old man stung, especially delivered with such contempt. I watched her storm out of the kitchen, feeling a heaviness in my chest that had nothing to do with my age. That afternoon I canceled the credit card without telling her. It seemed a small act of self-preservation. Our meals together became increasingly rare. Amanda would sleep until noon, then leave without explanation, returning late in the evening smelling of alcohol and expensive perfume. On the occasions when we did share the dinner table, conversation was minimal and tense. I found myself missing the silence of living alone, which had never seemed lonely until now. One Friday evening, I returned from my Veterans Club meeting to find my house transformed. Music thumped through the walls, and cars lined the street. Inside, at least 20 strangers filled my living room and kitchen, drinking from my glassware and sitting on my new furniture that Amanda had ordered without my permission. I found her holding court in the kitchen, laughing with 3 people I had never seen before. When she spotted me, her smile faltered slightly before returning with forced brightness. "Dad!" she called out, her voice carrying over the music. "You remember Stephanie and Kyle from high school, right? And this is Jordan. He works with me in Chicago." I nodded politely, though I had no recollection of her school friends, then asked if I could speak with her privately. In the relative quiet of the laundry room, I tried to remain calm. Amanda, I wish you had asked before throwing a party. This is still my home. She rolled her eyes. God, you are such a killjoy. These are my friends, and I am stuck in this boring house in this boring town. What else am I supposed to do? You could have asked, I repeated, or given me some notice. So you could say no? She retorted. You always try to control everything. This accusation was so wildly unfair that I almost laughed. I had given her complete freedom, opened my home unconditionally, and asked virtually nothing of her. The irony that she was the one who had rearranged my house, spent my money, and disrupted my routines without consultation seemed entirely lost on her. I will be in my room, I said finally, unwilling to argue. Please try to keep the noise down after 11. The neighbors are elderly. As I headed upstairs, I heard her mutter, just like you. The next morning, I woke early as usual and went downstairs to find my home in disarray. Empty bottles, half-eaten food, and cigarette butts littered every surface. The new couch Amanda had ordered had a large wine stain spreading across one cushion. In the kitchen, my grandmother's antique serving bowl lay shattered on the floor, apparently knocked off the counter during the festivities. I was carefully collecting the broken pieces when Amanda finally emerged around noon, looking disheveled and irritable. It is so early, she complained, squinting at the sunlight streaming through the windows. It is after 12, I corrected her, holding up the broken fragments. This was your great-grandmother's bowl. It survived 2 world wars and a cross-country move in a covered wagon, but not one night with your friends. Instead of the apology I expected, Amanda shrugged. It was ugly anyway, too old-fashioned, like everything else around here. Something inside me shifted then, a fundamental rewiring of how I saw my daughter. This casual dismissal of family history, of things that held meaning and memory, revealed a callousness I could no longer attribute to temporary stress or the difficulties of her divorce. That evening, I was in my study reviewing my bank statements when I made another disturbing discovery. Someone had accessed my online banking and transferred $5,000 to an external account. The transfer had been initiated from my home IP address while I was at my doctor's appointment the previous day. Confronting Amanda yielded more defiance than remorse. How else am I supposed to get back on my feet? She demanded. You have plenty saved up. It is not like you are spending it on anything. That money is my retirement, I explained, struggling to keep my voice steady. I worked 42 years to save it. And I am your daughter, she countered, as if this fact entitled her to whatever she wanted. Family is supposed to help family. Help, yes, but this was not discussed or agreed to. You took it without asking. She threw up her hands in exasperation. Because you would have said no. You are so stingy with your money, sitting on it while I am trying to rebuild my life. I did not respond immediately, taking time to lock my computer and change my banking passwords before continuing the conversation. When I suggested again that she look for employment, the argument escalated. You have no idea what the job market is like now, she shouted. Everything is different from when you just walked into the factory with a high school diploma and got handed a career. I had actually earned my engineering degree at night while working full-time, but correcting her seemed pointless. The gulf between us felt unbridgeable. The true extent of Amanda's plans became clear a few days later. I returned from grocery shopping to find her in my home office, rifling through my filing cabinet. What are you doing? I asked from the doorway, startling her. Just looking for some old photos, she claimed unconvincingly, closing the drawer too quickly. That evening, I carefully checked my files and discovered several documents missing, including the deed to my house and information about my investment accounts. A cold dread settled over me as pieces began falling into place. The questions about selling the house, the comments about downsizing, the unexplained phone calls she would take outside or in whispered tones. My suspicions were confirmed beyond doubt when I overheard another phone conversation, this one taken in the backyard while she thought I was napping. The lawyer thinks we can make a case for financial conservatorship, she was saying. He is 67, lives alone, and the house is too much for him to manage. We just need documentation of cognitive decline. I felt physically ill. My own daughter was actively plotting to take control of my assets by having me declared incompetent. The betrayal was so profound, so complete, that I sat in stunned silence on my bed for nearly an hour afterward, trying to process this new reality. That night, I locked my bedroom door for the first time since Amanda had arrived. Sleep eluded me as I grappled with what to do next. I had always believed that love meant supporting your family unconditionally, but I was beginning to understand that boundaries were not just permissible but necessary, even with those you love most. Perhaps especially with them. The morning that everything came to a head began like any other. I rose at 6, a lifetime habit from my working days that retirement had not changed. The house was quiet as I made my way to the kitchen, Amanda still asleep after another late night out. I started the coffee maker, the gentle gurgling providing a soothing background to my morning ritual of reading the news on my tablet. As I waited for the coffee to brew, I noticed Amanda's designer handbag on the kitchen counter, carelessly left open. I had no intention of snooping, but a folded document with the letterhead of Wilson & Associates, attorneys at law, was clearly visible. Something compelled me to look closer, perhaps self-preservation after weeks of mounting suspicion. The document outlined a petition for conservatorship, with my name listed as the subject. Phrases jumped out at me: diminished capacity, unable to manage financial affairs, best interests of the protected person. Most disturbing was the name listed as the proposed conservator, Amanda Lawson, daughter. The form was partially completed, waiting only for final details and filing. My hands trembled as I carefully returned the paper exactly as I had found it. The coffee maker beeped its completion, but I stood frozen, trying to process this ultimate betrayal. My own daughter, whom I had welcomed unconditionally in her time of need, was actively working to have my autonomy legally stripped away. I poured myself a cup of coffee and one for Amanda, then sat at the kitchen table, waiting. The minutes stretched as I rehearsed what to say, how to approach this final confrontation. When Amanda finally appeared around 10, her hair disheveled and eyes puffy from sleep, I pushed a mug toward her, now containing coffee that had grown tepid. "Morning," she mumbled, reaching for the cup. "We need to talk," I said quietly. "I saw the conservatorship papers in your bag." Her body went rigid, eyes suddenly alert. "You went through my things?" The bag was open on the counter. The document was visible. I responded evenly, determined to maintain composure. "Why, Amanda? After everything, why would you do this?" She recovered quickly, shifting from shock to defense. "You would not understand. This is for your own good." "Explain it to me then," I challenged. "Help me understand how taking control of my home and my money against my will is for my good." Amanda set the mug down hard, coffee sloshing over the rim. "Look around you, Dad. You are living in the past. This house is too big for you. Your money is just sitting there when it could be put to better use. You are not making rational decisions anymore." "What irrational decisions have I made?" I asked, genuinely curious about what justification she had constructed. She gestured vaguely around. "All of this. Refusing to downsize. Keeping furniture from the dark ages. Not updating anything. And you are getting forgetful," she added, though we both knew this was false. "Last week you could not find your glasses, and you forgot your Veterans Club meeting." "My glasses were moved from where I always keep them," I pointed out, "because you rearranged my nightstand. And I missed the meeting because you told me you needed a ride to look at apartments, then canceled at the last minute." Her eyes narrowed. "This is exactly what I am talking about. You twist everything to blame others. Classic sign of cognitive decline." The calculated cruelty of her words left me momentarily speechless. This was gaslighting in its purest form, a deliberate attempt to make me question my own perceptions and memory. I had read about such manipulation but never expected to experience it from my own child. "Amanda," I said finally, "this has to stop. I want you to leave my house." She laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "And go where? Back to Greg? He is already dating his paralegal. That is why we separated. This confirmed what I had suspected from overhearing her calls, that she had been less than truthful about her marriage ending. I tried a different approach. What happened to you? I asked softly. When did money and status become more important than honesty and respect? Her face flushed with sudden anger. Do not pretend you know me or my life. You have been stuck in this pathetic little existence so long you cannot even imagine what the real world is like. Some of us want more than a dying factory town and memories of the good old days. I kept my voice calm. I never stopped you from pursuing whatever life you wanted. I supported your education, your marriage, your career choices. But I will not support this. Support? She scoffed, her voice rising. You call this support? Living in this museum to the past? You know what your problem is. You gave up after Mom died. You just stopped living. Stop trying. It is depressing and pathetic. Each word was a dart, precisely aimed at vulnerable spots. But rather than wounding me further, her attack crystallized something I had been slowly realizing over these difficult weeks. Amanda's cruelty reflected her own emptiness, not my worth. I stood up, steadier than I had felt in days. I would like you to leave now. Today. She stared at me in disbelief. Are you seriously kicking out your only child? Your family? I am asking my adult daughter, who has been disrespectful, dishonest, and manipulative, to find other accommodations. I clarified. There is a difference. Her face contorted with rage. You have no idea who you are dealing with. I could make your life very difficult, more difficult than discovering my daughter is trying to have me declared incompetent to steal my home, I asked, with genuine curiosity in my tone. She stood suddenly, grabbing the coffee mug. That coffee has been sitting there for hours, she snarled. It is old and disgusting. She paused, looking me directly in the eyes, just like your face. With that, she threw the contents of the mug directly at me. The lukewarm coffee splashed across my face and shirt, dripping down onto the floor. Time seemed to slow as we both registered what had just happened. I did not shout. I did not even blink. With deliberate calmness, I picked up a dish towel and wiped my face, then walked to the front door and opened it wide. Get out, I said simply. Amanda stood frozen for a moment, perhaps expecting me to back down as I always had before. When I remained at the door, unmoved, her expression shifted from anger to uncertainty. You cannot be serious, she said, but with less conviction. I am entirely serious. Leave now, or I will call the police and report you for assault and attempted financial abuse of an elder. I have the conservatorship documents as evidence. You would not dare, she challenged, though fear had begun to edge into her voice. I am your daughter, and I am a person deserving of basic respect, which you have consistently failed to show. My relationship to you does not change that fact. We stared at each other across the kitchen, decades of history hanging in the balance. I saw the moment she realized I would not yield, that something fundamental had changed. Without another word, she stormed upstairs, presumably to pack her things. I remained by the open door, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt fully present in my own life, standing in my own truth. The coffee drying on my shirt was uncomfortable, but the clarity in my mind was worth every discomfort. Amanda returned downstairs 20 minutes later with only one hastily packed suitcase, her expression a mixture of disbelief and fury. She clearly had expected me to reconsider, to apologize, to beg her to stay as I had done so many times throughout her life when conflict arose. The fact that I remained firmly by the open door, my stance unwavering, seemed to genuinely shock her. You cannot be serious, she repeated, stopping several feet away from me. Over a stupid cup of coffee? We both know this is about far more than coffee, I replied calmly. This is about respect, honesty, and boundaries, all of which you have repeatedly violated. So you are choosing your pride over your family, she accused, attempting one last manipulation. Over your only daughter. Mom would be so disappointed in you right now. The mention of Sarah might have wounded me once, but I found myself nodding thoughtfully instead. You know, I have thought a lot about what your mother would say about this situation. Sarah valued kindness and integrity above all else. She would be heartbroken to see how you have behaved in this house. Amanda flinched slightly, perhaps hearing the ring of truth in my words. Then her expression hardened again. Fine. I will go to a hotel for a few days until you calm down and remember your priorities. She emphasized the last word with bitter sarcasm. I remained unmoved. I think a more permanent arrangement would be best. You are welcome to take your personal belongings, but I expect you to find your own housing going forward. And if I refuse? She challenged. With steady hands, I pulled my cell phone from my pocket. Then I will call the police right now and report the assault and attempted financial exploitation. I have photographs of the conservatorship documents and copies of the unauthorized bank transfers. I have changed all my passwords and contacted my bank and lawyer. The choice is yours, Amanda. Her eyes widened as she realized the extent of my preparations. You have been planning this. No, I corrected her. I have been protecting myself, which I should have done much sooner. She looked from me to the open door, then back again, seemingly calculating her options. The confident, manipulative woman who had taken over my home suddenly appeared younger and less certain. I need more time to pack properly, she protested. I cannot fit everything in one suitcase. You can return for the rest of your things tomorrow while I am at my veterans meeting, from 2 to 4 in the afternoon. I will leave your boxes in the garage. I will not be here, and I will have someone else present in the house. You are having me supervised? Like a criminal? The indignation in her voice might have been comical under different circumstances. I am ensuring there are witnesses, I clarified. Given recent events, that seems prudent. The reality of her situation finally appeared to sink in. This was not a temporary punishment or an emotional reaction that would soon blow over. This was a fundamental shift in our relationship, a line drawn that would not be erased. You will regret this, she said, but the threat sounded hollow even to my ears. I am your daughter, your only family. Being family is not a license to abuse, Amanda. It should mean greater care and respect, not less. She grabbed her suitcase with unnecessary force. I hope you enjoy living alone in this mausoleum with your precious things. Maybe you can talk to your furniture since you care about it more than your own daughter. I held the door wider. I wish you well, Amanda. Truly. I hope you find whatever it is you are looking for. With a final glare, she stormed past me onto the porch. I watched as she threw her suitcase into the trunk of her luxury car, the one I now suspected Greg was still making payments on, and drove away with a screech of tires against pavement. Only when her car disappeared around the corner did I finally close the door. The house felt immediately different. Quieter, certainly, but also somehow lighter, as if a heavy, oppressive weight had been lifted. I walked slowly through the rooms, surveying the evidence of Amanda's 2-month stay. The designer clothes still hanging in the guest room closet. The expensive makeup scattered across the bathroom counter. The unfamiliar furniture she had ordered with my money. I should have felt devastated. This was my only child, my flesh and blood, whom I had just sent away with no certainty of reconciliation. Instead, I felt an unexpected calm, a sense of rightness that transcended the pain. For too long, I had confused unconditional love with unlimited tolerance for mistreatment. Today, I had finally understood the difference. True to her threat, Amanda did not leave quietly. Within hours, my phone began buzzing with messages from relatives and old family friends. According to Amanda, I had cruelly thrown her out with no warning, refused to help during her divorce crisis, and was showing signs of paranoia and dementia. The calls ranged from concerned to accusatory, with distant cousins and friends I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly weighing in on my mental health and parenting. I answered each one the same way, with calm clarity about what had actually transpired, offering to show the conservatorship documents and bank records if they truly wanted to understand the situation. Most backed down quickly when faced with specific details rather than Amanda's emotional narrative. A few genuinely listened and expressed shock at what she had attempted. One or two chose to believe her version regardless. and I accepted that as the cost of standing my ground. The promised police supervision for Amanda's belongings retrieval proved unnecessary. She sent a moving company instead, with a detailed list of items that included several pieces of furniture and artwork that had been in my home long before she arrived. I calmly explained to the movers which items were hers to take and which were not. When they called her to clarify, I could hear her shouting through the phone even from several feet away. They looked apologetic as they left with only her personal possessions, leaving behind the new furniture she had ordered, which I later donated to a women's shelter. My lawyer advised me to freeze my credit and place alerts on all my accounts, which I did immediately. She also helped me draft a cease and desist letter when Amanda attempted to contact my doctor directly, presumably to continue her campaign to question my competence. The letter ended those attempts, though not the angry texts and occasional late-night calls that I eventually solved by blocking her number. The hardest moment came 3 weeks after Amanda left, when I received a thick envelope from her attorney. Inside was a formal demand for financial support, claiming that I had promised to fund her fresh start after her divorce, and now was obligated to fulfill that commitment. Attached was a detailed list of expenses, including rent for a luxury apartment, a car lease, and even a proposed monthly allowance for clothing and entertainment. My lawyer assured me the claim had no legal merit, and we responded with a brief, factual rebuttal. We never heard from that particular attorney again, though I suspected Amanda simply moved on to other targets for financial support. Throughout all of this, I maintained my routines. I tended my garden, attended my veterans meetings, and volunteered at the community center. I found comfort in these simple activities, in the tangible results of seeds growing into vegetables, and in the genuine appreciation of the seniors I helped navigate technology. Small kindnesses exchanged with neighbors and friends began to heal the wound of Amanda's betrayal. One evening, about 2 months after Amanda had left, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. On my porch stood Greg, Amanda's estranged husband, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Mr. Lawson," he said formally, "I hope you do not mind me stopping by. I wanted to apologize." I invited him in, curious about what he felt he needed to apologize for. Over coffee, he explained that he had recently discovered the extent of Amanda's deception, not just with me but in their marriage as well. She was having an affair with her boss for over a year, he explained, his voice tight with lingering hurt. When I found out and confronted her, she claimed she needed space to think. I now know she was just buying time to figure out her financial situation. When her boss ended things and would not leave his wife as promised, she tried to get back with me. I listened without interrupting, seeing the pieces of the puzzle finally coming together. Greg had been manipulated just as I had, though in different ways. Amanda had lied to both of us, playing victim while actively causing harm. "She told me you threw her out because you were becoming paranoid and forgetful," Greg continued. "But then I found these in her email when I was looking for our tax documents." He handed me printed copies of the same conservatorship papers I had discovered, along with email exchanges between Amanda and her attorney discussing strategies for gaining control of my assets. There were also emails to real estate agents about listing my house for sale, all while I was supposedly declining mentally. "I thought you should know," Greg finished quietly. "I filed for divorce last week. Whatever happens between you and Amanda, I wanted you to have all the information." I thanked him for his honesty, feeling an unexpected kinship with this man who had also been deceived by someone we both had loved. After he left, I sat in my living room for a long time, processing this final confirmation of what I had already come to accept. The daughter I thought I knew had become someone unrecognizable to me, someone capable of calculating harm against those who loved her most. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in months, secure in the knowledge that I had made the right choice, difficult though it had been. The first month after cutting ties with Amanda was the hardest. Despite knowing I had made the necessary choice, I struggled with waves of grief and self-doubt. Had I failed as a father? Could I have done something differently that would have led to a better outcome? These questions haunted my quiet evenings alone in the house that now felt both peaceful and empty. My sleep became disrupted, I would wake at 3 in the morning, replaying conversations, and wondering if there had been warning signs I missed throughout Amanda's life. The photo albums I had always treasured became painful to look at. The smiling child in those images now a stranger to me. I began to withdraw from social activities, embarrassed to face friends who knew about the situation. The story had spread through our small community, as such stories inevitably do. While most people were supportive, I still felt a sense of shame, as if Amanda's behavior somehow reflected on my parenting, on some fundamental failure on my part. It was my friend Frank from the Veterans Club who finally intervened. He showed up at my door one Saturday morning with fishing gear and a determined expression. "Get your hat, Tony," he said without preamble. "We are going to the lake, and I am not taking no for an answer." Too tired to argue, I complied. At the lake, sitting in companionable silence as our lines cast ripples across the still water, Frank finally spoke about what everyone had been carefully avoiding. "My son did not speak to me for 8 years, he said matter-of-factly. After his mother died, he blamed me for everything. Said I had not gotten her to the doctor soon enough, that I chose the wrong treatments. It was grief-talking, but it nearly broke me. I had known Frank for years, but had never heard this story. "I am sorry," I said inadequately. He shrugged. "The point is, it was not my fault, and what happened with Amanda is not your fault either. Kids make their own choices. All we can do is love them and set boundaries." The simplicity of his wisdom struck me deeply. On the drive home, Frank mentioned a support group that met at the community center, specifically for parents estranged from adult children. I resisted at first, the idea of sharing my pain with strangers unappealing. But after another week of solitary evenings, I decided to at least try one meeting. Walking into that room was one of the hardest things I had ever done. It felt like admitting a failure, exposing my deepest wound to scrutiny. But as the meeting progressed, as I listened to stories from mothers and fathers of all backgrounds and circumstances, something shifted inside me. These were not bad parents. They were ordinary people who had faced extraordinary pain from the very relationships that should have been sources of joy. When it came time for me to speak, I shared my story without embellishment or excuse. I spoke about the conservatorship attempt, the financial exploitation, the coffee thrown in my face, and instead of judgment, I received nods of recognition and murmurs of understanding. Several group members had experienced similar betrayals, some even more severe than mine. "I do not want to hate my daughter," I admitted toward the end, "but I do not know how to reconcile the Amanda I raised with the person who did these things." The group facilitator, a gentle-voiced therapist named Diane, offered a perspective I had not considered. Sometimes we have to accept that we may never fully understand why someone we love makes the choices they do. The path to peace is not through explanation but through acceptance and establishing healthy boundaries. I began attending the group regularly. Through those meetings, I learned about concepts that had never been part of my vocabulary before: emotional manipulation, narcissistic behaviors, financial abuse of elders. I came to understand that what I had experienced followed patterns familiar to social workers and therapists who specialized in family dynamics and elder care. Equally important, I formed connections with people who truly understood my situation. We celebrated small victories together, like the first holiday spent alone that did not feel devastating, or the courage to tell our stories to friends without shame. We supported each other through difficult milestones and shared strategies for healing. 6 months after Amanda left, I had reached a place of relative peace. I had redecorated my home, not to erase memories but to reclaim the space as my own. I joined a community garden project, sharing my knowledge with younger families eager to learn. I even started dating again, having coffee once a week with a kind widow from my church choir. It was on a crisp autumn morning when an unexpected text message appeared on my phone. It was from Amanda, the first contact since I had blocked her number months earlier. This came from a new number. Just a simple message: "Can we talk?" My immediate reaction was wariness. I shared the message with my support group that evening and received a chorus of cautious advice. Some urged complete refusal, citing their own experiences with false reconciliations that led only to more pain. Others suggested meeting in a public place, with clear boundaries established in advance. All reminded me that I had the right to protect myself, regardless of family ties. After careful consideration, I responded that I would meet her for coffee at a cafe downtown, a neutral location where we could talk without the emotional triggers of my home. I specified a 1-hour time frame and made it clear this was just a conversation, not a guarantee of anything further. The woman who walked into the cafe 3 days later bore little resemblance to the polished, entitled person who had stormed out of my house half a year earlier. Amanda's designer clothes had been replaced with simple jeans and a sweater. Her previously platinum hair had returned to its natural brown, and the carefully applied makeup was gone, revealing shadows under her eyes and a pallor to her skin that spoke of difficult times. She sat across from me, hands wrapped around her coffee cup as if seeking warmth, and for several minutes seemed unable to meet my gaze. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter than I remembered. "I do not know where to start," she admitted. "I have rehearsed this conversation 100 times, and now I cannot remember any of it." "Perhaps start with why you wanted to meet," I suggested, keeping my tone neutral. She nodded, taking a deep breath. "I hit rock bottom after you kicked me out. Greg finalized the divorce and got a restraining order when I would not stop calling him. My friends, it turns out, were not actually friends when I could no longer afford to go out with them. I lost my job when I went back to Chicago. Apparently, sleeping with your married boss only works until his wife finds out." I listened without interrupting, noting the absence of blame in her recounting, so different from our last interaction. "I ended up staying in my car for 2 weeks, she continued, then a shelter for a month. I have a small apartment now and a job at a marketing firm. It is entry level, a huge step down, but it is honest work. I am glad you found stability," I said carefully. "Dad," she said, finally meeting my eyes directly, "I am not here to ask for money or to move back in. I am here because I have been in therapy, really doing the work this time, and I need to make amends. What I did to you was unforgivable. I planned to take everything from you. I treated you with contempt when you had shown me nothing but love. I cannot undo that. But I need you to know that I see it now, and I am deeply, truly sorry." The words seemed genuine. Her eyes filling with tears she made no attempt to hide. Still, I had learned caution the hard way. "Thank you for the apology," I said. "That means something to me. But trust, once broken, is not easily rebuilt." She nodded quickly. "I know. I do not expect you to trust me again, maybe ever. I would not, in your position. She paused, swallowing hard. "I miss my dad. Even if all we can ever have is coffee once a month in a public place, that would be more than I deserve." We talked for the full hour, cautiously navigating this new territory. Amanda shared more about her therapy, her diagnoses of narcissistic tendencies, and the childhood trauma of losing her mother that she had never properly processed. She talked about her new job and the small apartment she had furnished from thrift stores, a far cry from the luxury she had once demanded as her right. Before we parted, I established clear boundaries. We would meet in public places only, for the foreseeable future. I would not discuss my finances or housing situation with her. Any gifts would be modest and given freely, not expected or demanded. Any violation of these boundaries would result in immediate consequences. She accepted these terms without protest, seeming almost relieved at the clarity. As she rose to leave, she hesitated, then placed a small wrapped package on the table. "It is nothing expensive," she assured me quickly. "Just something I found that I thought you might want back." Inside was my father's pocket watch, which had disappeared during Amanda's stay. I had assumed it was lost forever, perhaps pawned for cash. Seeing it again, tarnished but intact, brought unexpected emotion to my throat. "Thank you," I said simply. Over the following year, Amanda and I rebuilt a relationship unlike anything we had before. Gone was the unquestioning trust and automatic forgiveness of the past. In its place grew something more measured, but perhaps more honest. a relationship between two adults with clear boundaries and mutual respect. Our monthly coffee meetings became bi-weekly. Then weekly phone calls were added. Small steps, each one tested and proven before the next was taken. I watched carefully for signs of the old manipulation, the subtle tactics she had once employed so effectively. Instead, I saw someone working hard to create a new pattern, stumbling sometimes but quickly recognizing and correcting course. 2 years after the coffee incident, I can say that I have a relationship with my daughter again. It is not perfect, and it bears the scars of our history. Trust returns slowly, in small increments earned through consistent behavior over time. I remain vigilant about my boundaries, having learned their value the hard way. The experience changed me profoundly. I am more discerning now about all my relationships, more willing to question dynamics that feel unbalanced or manipulative. I have discovered a strength in myself that I never knew existed, the capacity to stand firm even when doing so causes pain. Most importantly, I have learned that love does not mean endless sacrifice of my own well-being. True love, whether for a child, a partner, or a friend, must include self-respect and healthy boundaries. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do, both for ourselves and for someone who is harming us, is to say no, to open the door and say, "This far, and no further." If you are facing a similar situation with someone you love, whether a child, a parent, or a partner, know that establishing boundaries is not selfish. It is necessary. You deserve basic respect and consideration, regardless of your age or relationship. And sometimes, the hardest decisions lead to the most important growth, both for you and, possibly, for the person you had to distance yourself from. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect yourself from someone you love? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more life lessons from those of us who have lived long enough to learn them the hard way. Remember, it is never too late to stand up for yourself and find peace. Thank you for listening, and I wish you strength on your own journey of setting healthy boundaries and honoring your worth.